Paula, if you're ready.
I'm ready. So welcome everybody to TRINKtalks episode number 4, the electric now and natural wine. Before we begin, let me just say a few quick words on the procedure just to make sure everything runs smoothly. We've muted all of the audience members to minimize the background noise, but we do encourage you to participate by posting your questions and comments in the chat section, and we'll be sure to address them at the end of the conversation. I also want to say a thank you to our web and logo designers and the entire team at Medienagenten in Bad Dürkheim for their absolutely fantastic work. This episode of TRINKtalks is supported by BottleStops, the specialist for wine tours in Germany. BottleStops organizes wine tours for interested individuals and also handles trip logistics for professionals and media. You can find out more at bottlestops.com. Now on to our portion of the program. Trink, as many of you who joined us before know, is the German word for drink. Makes sense given our choice of subject matter. It's also a new publication launching in early fall that aims at nothing less than changing the conversation around and about German-speaking wines, building bridges between the people making the wines and the people drinking them. Featuring reporting from world-class journalists on both sides of the equation, narrative essays, interviews, bottle picks, and original photography, we hope to communicate the history and, most importantly, the heart of Germany, Austria, Südtirol, and Switzerland, one wine region, one wine story at a time. My name, for those who don't know me, is Paula Sidor. I'm sitting here in Bad Hannef, Germany, on the 51st parallel at the very most northern edge of wine growing on the Rhine River. I'm an American wine writer and translator, originally from New Hampshire and living in Germany since 2002. I am also a child of the 70s, which means I'm no stranger to natural food. My earliest memory, in fact, is of a natural food store where I had carob instead of chocolate, where things were a little dusty, a little unusual, a little not as neatly stocked as everywhere else, but somehow all the more authentic as a result. And I would say that I came to natural wine with a healthy skepticism of natural, because natural was not something that was necessarily prized growing up, where all the other kids had Oreos and sugar cereals, and I had carob-coated peanuts. My mom got a bit of a reputation because for Halloween, she would give out boxes of raisins instead of candy bars, which meant that nobody came to our house. So natural was not necessarily a positive in my head, which I think is a good way to come to anything, to come in with a bit of skepticism. But I'm officially a convert. The same things that maybe I didn't like as a kid in natural or in natural food are the same things that I've come to appreciate as an adult and as a wine drinker. The unpredictable, but more importantly, the authenticity. Valerie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Paula. My name is Valerie Capuala, and I'm a New York-based wine writer who, like Paula, is drawn to German-speaking wines. And my particular interest is in the subset of wines that come from holistic farming and a hands-off approach in the cellar. One of the features of Germany's culture that drew me to the country again and again since my student days is its remarkable commitment to environmental stewardship and the ways that this is interwoven into policies and daily life, and in ways that trace their roots to what we might call the first environmental movement of 19th century German Romanticism. There's in fact something very romantic about natural wine, and Germany's expression of it gets right to the heart of it. So today we have 3 guests who are, by virtue of their work and the way they came to natural wines, are exceptionally qualified to help us understand that Germany does indeed do natural wine, and in a truly thrilling and culture transforming way, and in its own particular context. Our guests are Thorsten Melsheimer of Weingut Melsheimer in Rheil on the Mosel, and Bianka and Daniel Schmitt in Florsheim-Dalsheim in Rheinhessen. Thorsten, we'll just jump right in with you and ask you to give us a brief introduction. Tell us about your background and how you came to biodynamic farming and natural winemaking. Thorsten, are you there?
I think he's muted. Could that be?
It seems so, yes.
He needs to unmute himself.
Now
Yep.
it's better. Now you can hear me.
Now we can.
Thank you.
Sorry, my fault. My fault. Yeah, I'm sitting in Rheinhessen, Mosel, in an old classic winery. I'm doing this here in 5th generation. And yeah, for 25 years now, we do organic farming. That was the first changing I did here at home after I studied in Geisenheim. And even if I didn't learn anything about organic farming in Geisenheim, I knew before I started there that I will do that later, because I was growing up in the 80s, born in the end of the 60s. So very political time, maybe a little bit like today. So for me, it was without any alternative to change into organic after studying. And so, but of course, Geisenheim influenced me. And in the beginning, I did some wines with Geisenheim recipes and using enzymes, using different yeast, cooling system and all this. But I had a wonderful cellar with wooden barrels inside, and I did very, very modern wines for this time in a 350-year-old cellar. I have wonderful vineyards in my Muley Hofberg. It's really extremely steep with a lot of rocks and dry stone walls in between. And after a few years, I recognized that it really does not fit together what I do outside, and then later what I do with my grapes in the cellar. And so I started a development here that I was using less and less in ingredients or additives to do my wines. And yeah, almost 10 years ago now, I did my first wine without anything.
Thank you. And Bianka and Daniel, can you tell us about your path?
Yes. So about us. First, maybe a few words about our biography. I was born in Hungary. In '91, I learned as a winemaker in Budapest, and then after my winemaker school, I was 21 years old. I got the chance to come here to Germany for 5 weeks as a cellar hand to do a harvest, to be a part of the harvest, and I landed at a wine with Schmitt. That 25-year-old sunny boy was just like freshly back from Australia. So yeah, in a couple of days, that was pretty sure that we would like to do wine together. Yes, then after we tried out a lot of things in the cellar, of course, and I did a winemaker master school after I learned German, and I finished it like last year in summer, exactly. About you?
Yeah, I made a normal apprenticeship and went to Weinsberg, which is a technical school for winemaking and viticulture. And then I went to New Zealand, Tasmania, and Austria to some more experience. In Tasmania, I get a little bit closer to the biodynamic working at Stefano Lubiano winery, which was a quite nice experience. And yeah, but the beginning came from my father in 2007. So I was in Weinsberg at this time, same as Thorsten. We still didn't learn too much about organic viticulture.
The same in Budapest.
20 years later, so it's still a little bit. Sometimes they speak about it, but it's not a big thing. Also in Fleurs and Balsam, we have just 3 organic wineries from 42 wineries, which is really not much. So for me, it was also quite new. But time by time, I get deeper into it. And when we finished our, after 3 years, we were certificated. And after 2 more years, I was looking for more. And in 2012, we were part of the Demeter Association. And we, in terms of learning more about biodynamic working and also the winemaking, we had the chance to go together to Patrick Meyer in 2012 because this was a really long harvest and there was a small break, so we could I could show Bianka also a little bit around, and yeah, this was quite inspiring for us, especially from the winemaking part. And yeah, so we came home and started in 2012 our first wine, a Riesling, and this was the beginning of the natural wine in Weingut Schmitt, also working organic. So it's not so long time that we do this, but yeah, now also almost 13, 12 years, and yeah, we feel quite comfortable and happy with it.
We found our way with this, of course, in this time in 2012 when we made the first wine without any additives. That was a huge step for us. That was also like as a trial. We made this wine also as like the first. How can I say? That was like kind of our first child. Because we were like freshly fall in love. We were pretty young. We met almost as children, I would say, like teenagers, and it was a beautiful way for us to know how intense this exchange what we have between us about informations, about learning from each other. So definitely supported us on our way and brought us there where we are now. And of course, it belongs to it, and I was pretty sure that I'm gonna tell it today in 2014. Was it in 13 or 14 when we visited Thorsten? 14, yes. Because of course we had only 3 wines in this time, but also when we visited in 2014 May, Thorsten, the Mosel, that was my birthday. Daniel brought me there. That was a beautiful opportunity for us to see in Germany.
I remember the day. I really remember. Yeah, you're sitting there on the bench outside.
And that was a beautiful exchange for us, and also a beautiful feeling, because the first winemaker who we visited was Patrick Meyer, and we just like fall in love, and this good energy what he had, and that was nice to have someone with also inspiring good energy
and a lot of experience
nearby.
It seems like it's very important in the natural wine community generally, but especially in Germany, for producers to find each other, because you seem to all sort of exist in little islands within your more conventional regions. And I imagine you also have to be willing to make something of a break with the traditions of your parents and your grandparents. Can both of you talk a little bit about the importance of both community and what it was like to make this conversion for your estate?
Yeah, I think so. It's a little bit different if we talk about natural wine or organic wine, because in the beginning we were organic. I was an organic farmer, and in 1995 there was a nice community here in Mosel, because so Ecovin, the Association for German Organic Wine, was founded in 1985, and that was a combination of a group here in Mosel around Traben-Trarbach, people like Rudolf Thorsten and some friends, and in Rheinhessen. So that these 2 groups built the first association for Germany. So I do this for 25 years, but sometimes I have the feeling that 25 years ago we had a better community than today, because it was smaller and we were really close together. It was a circle of so 80% of these organic producers of Mosel were in a circle of 10 to 15 kilometers, and then a few from more far away. You have to know Mosel is 200 kilometers just in Germany, and so it was very easy to start in '95. It was different from that what the others told me 10 years earlier. It was much more difficult to start an organic farm in this very conservative landscape. Mosel is totally far away from cities. It's very quiet here when we are without tourists in winter, for example. And so it is very it's still very conservative, but in a way open for the world, because Mosel always sold a lot of wine internationally. So there was influence enough. But yeah, it was easy for me. The natural wine is something special even today here. Because I must say, even the organic farmers, I don't want to, I will say a number, but it's about 75%, I guess, doesn't do any natural wines, no pet nut, no, even no wines with lower SO2. So they just do the normal organic wine with SO2 and filtering at the end, sometimes with added yeast, sometimes with spontaneous fermentation. All fine, but we are really just a few. But that is, again, a very nice community. So we are in a circle of 5 kilometers. We are 5. And so we are good friends and meet very often. And so that is, but for example, when I started, that was very funny. In my first natural wine was Vade Retro in 2011. And when I talked to Thorsten in 2012 that I did a natural wine, he didn't know it. And I didn't know that he did his first in 2010. So that we were good friends, meeting 20 times a year or more. And we didn't know from each other that we do natural wines.
That sounds a little bit like Burgundy in the 80s. That's really interesting. Thank you. And Bianca and Daniel, how about you? What is your experience with community?
Yeah, so here actually around us now, a lot of young winemakers starting to work on the similar way as we do. Of course, we are open and happy to support them. It's also a nice thing because it brings us together. So somehow I have this feeling that we are just on the beginning to have a lot of friends and good friends, because it's like a beautiful exchange what's happening between us. We already knew those names and we knew that they are just like around us, but somehow we never had the chance to get together. And through this, that they also discovered the way of honest winemaking. Somehow, of course, we got together. Otherwise, yes, with around us there are not many how can I say it, like older winemakers who we have any exchange, except Inge and Volker Benzinger. They are in Palatine, very nice people. Yes, we with them we have a very good and nice connection. How do you say this?
Yeah, so from the organic growing, there's one guy who was probably part of the group from Thorsten, so Volker Feth, and he also started in the beginning of the 90s here working biodynamic organic. So he was also helpful in that time when we converted to organic farming. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So it's still, there were not a lot of people in 2007 who did this, also with a further philosophy in the winemaking. So yeah, we try to so we learned a lot of things from him, or made some classes. And from the winemaking part, when we started in 2012, I think we were, so it was our community to develop ourselves, because also it was nice to have two people with a experience and with an idea. And Bianka had from her apprenticeship a nice also a lot of knowledge about microbiology, and
I had
so,
a very, very good chemistry teacher.
Yeah, and yeah, I had the farming part a bit more deeper, and so we had a two poles who had could give input in both, from both sides, and yeah, we learned quite fast and found a style for us. And now it's after 7-8 years, we have a next generation who starts with it, as Bianca already said, and it's nice that that we have a good community, and we also can help them and share our experience. And yeah, looks quite like a good future.
Fantastic. It's interesting. The idea of community and defining or finding one another in the community is sort of the heart of my next question, which is, you have these estates, and in many cases it sounds like you all know each other, you know who's growing, who's doing what in what style, but yet many of you didn't realize that the other one was doing natural wine, the way that Thorsten was saying before, that he knew Rudy Thorsten as Rudy Thorsten, but not necessarily in this natural schema, if you will. How do you define, each of you, if you would, how do you define natural wine? Is it important that people that outside of your community, is it important that consumers recognize you as a natural winemaker, or as a winemaker who makes some natural wines? Like, what is the definition? What is the heart of who you are? Because I find that that's, natural wines have this authenticity to them. Somebody want to take it?
Very, very difficult question, because there are so many meanings outside about natural wine.
Right.
And for me, it's very, very easy. I do organic, but I do 25 different Riesling every year. I use sulfites, I filter my wines. I do everything spontaneous, but I do some wines without no additives. So my rule for natural wine is nothing in, nothing out. And then you ask the neighbor, and he has a totally different opinion of it. And so that is, at the moment, it's not a real problem. But I see that wine industry is looking on us and see there's a growing market. And so today we have some so-called natural wines made out of conventional farmed grapes, and that is of course a catastrophe. And so maybe we have to build some international rules for natural wine, but then of course this will be a compromise, and I will be extremely unsatisfied with it at the end, with my very consequent idea of natural wine. And so I really see a big problem coming there. And first of all, today I always say we must bring this organic farming inside the definition, because it's just a joke when somebody is doing herbicides in its vineyards and spraying synthetics. And then he does a wine, a little bit, a skin maceration, and only 30 milligram SO2, what is not so little, and he calls it natural wine, and that's just yeah, that hurts sometimes. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, it's of course, was this question. Yeah, since we do what we are doing, we got this question pretty often, and what we always gave as an answer: every winemaker needs to make a definition first of all for himself. Then you need to define your work, and then you can follow your way. But for sure, for us also the first important thing is to work minimum organic. Of course, we work biodynamic. We stay at this way, and we happy to learn every day more and more from our vineyards. But of course, we accept other winemakers even if they just like only organic and they like have the target wants to work biodynamic. It's a totally different thing, but it's acceptable. I definitely agree with what Thorsten said about conventional working winemakers who make some cloudy wine and put it to the market because they see the profit and the possibility in it. Yes. Otherwise.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
already.
for example, we like in Austria, they did already a rule for natural wine, and they allowed bentonite. That is, I was loud laughing when I read this. So, for what reason do you need it when you do a natural wine? So
Yeah.
it's so that is the result when you have to do compromises. Yeah. Then.
Paula, so you also like had a question about how we both of the wineries work. So in our case, we took over the property with classical wines. We could not find ourselves in this way. So we in the last years we had some part of the classical wines what we needed to do for all their customers for my parents-in-law. Now we officially took over the property, and then we cancelled kind of this way of selling wine. So this is the first. This is gonna be the first vintage that we do everything 100%, or yeah, let me say like 99% of the way how we do from the whole 16-hectare surface what we have. There's like a small part we have a contract with my parents-in-law, and there stays we need to make for the restaurant and for the guest house. My sister-in-law a small part of classical wines, which we actually we buy the grapes from neighbors for this small amount of classical wines, because of course we would like to keep everything for ourselves from our own grapes. Yes, but this is actually the situation what we have right now.
Thank you. So against that background, what do you think it is that makes Germany so comparatively reluctant to embrace natural wine across the board? I mean, you have France and Italy, even tiny Austria seem way ahead of where Germany is. And going along with that, it seems like it's very hard to get the message out in the US that Germany is a major force in natural wine. I mean, I have been to raw wine in New York several years in a row, and I see Austria's table stretching a mile, and Germany has maybe 2 producers. So why do you think that is? Where is the disconnect both at home in Germany and abroad? I know that German natural wine has a huge market in Scandinavia and in Japan, but where do you think disconnect comes within Germany and with the US?
So yes, in our case, that took a bit of time till we get the connection to our importer. So at the point we started to work with Zeverwijn, that was sure that we're gonna participate on the raw wine fairs, but somehow only Row, New York was a fair that we did not participate. It was like always from the date somehow in between harvest time that was just like not matching. But there is actually, I don't know, I personally I did not recognize that there will be something missing, because in our case we are pretty good distributed. I mean, we have this feeling that we are good distributed, especially in New York, but in the whole US.
Yeah, so yeah, it's mostly 2-3 German winemakers who coming to this kind of fairs. But yeah, so they're still since I think since maybe 19. It's now with a couple of young people from Franconia and from Rheinhessen. It starts to getting more, but for a long time there were still not much. Maybe 8 to 10 wineries. Some of them are quite small, and so they didn't have also the quantity. So the whole world was asking for German natural wines, and the States are a very big country, so it's quite hard to have a, yeah, if you just have maybe 5 hectares or 6 hectares, and then it's yeah, so you have the possibility to sell in 30-40 countries. Yeah, you will spread it also, yeah, because you want to learn more about the different countries. And yeah, so at the moment it's like that there's not much wineries doing this, and also the wineries who did this, the quantities are not so big, I would say. It's also a reason, one of the reasons. Yeah.
But like you said, most of us are very small wineries, and for me, I always ask: is it our job to fly around the world, to stand on fairs? First of all, we are farmers, and we have to do the wine, and it's something that changed in the last 20 or 30 years, that the winemaker has to be all over the world. Everybody's asking for the winemaker. And so of course I go somewhere when my importer in this or that country asks me to come, but I never would go to an international wine fair outside Germany. I do only one wine fair in per year. And that's, I don't see any necessity for this for me personally.
Okay.
That's a really interesting observation, and sort of goes along with something that Thorsten, you and I have talked before about, which is in terms of music. For me, I find natural wine has a lot of similarities to sort of what happened in the 90s with the grunge scene out west, that you had this music style. It was something new, but it was also something old. It was something that was celebrated by some for its energy and then derided by others as noise. But one of the things that sort of propelled grunge, and what I think sort of ended up killing it on its own, was this jump to the mass market. One of the things that sets natural wine apart is the fact that you're working in risky situations with low yields, with low production numbers. How do you put that together? In Austria, the natural wine scene has really taken off, also in the export. And the same thing for another number of other countries. Where do you think the disconnect happens in Germany? Is it just because Germany as a wine growing country is small with 100,000?
No, when you look on Germany, first of all, our industry is based on cars and chemistry, and there is a big lobby work against organic farming in Germany. So it's all over ideas of farming, not only wine. That Germany is a little slower in growing in this, and when you talk to 30-year-old, so really young producers here in Mosel, they always fight you with this copper argument, and because they really believe what the chemistry lobbyists tell them, that the synthetics are not dangerous for nature, and they think this copper, what is a poison, but what we know very good, how it works, nature knows it. Nothing, of course, organisms die when they meet copper, but but for example, they don't mutate. What happens when you work with synthetics, and so for me, it's all this the system of this country maybe a little bit that we are so technic affine and look for modern things and don't believe in the good old world and don't believe our grandfathers.
Okay.
What is good in some political ways.
So it's more an inside, it's inside the German system that's keeping it down. Bianca and Daniel, do you see that in some of the same? Or do you see?
Yes, so from my side, I totally agree with this. What Thorsten says. Of course, we have a few years difference between us, which also means that he has more experience about life, and also the German economy, especially as me, because I'm only since 8 years here. But I recognize this is that economy is a big thing, and somehow also is a driven here. So for example, just like when I compare it with the Hungarian school, the school here, yeah, in Hungary we needed to work a bit more oxidized in the winemaker school. We needed to work with more operas because they had it there, yeah. This was what they had. We learned always theoretically, sorry. About the new machines, and then we watched videos from the Oppenheimer winemaker school, how they used these new machines, and then we went to the cellar, and then we could try it out somehow to understand how, for example, a filtration machine is working on the old machines, because my school didn't have the new machines. But here in Germany, for example, industry supports the schools with all the machines. So in Hungary, they need to buy it. But I guess in Germany, they just like give it as a present. Because then the children go home and they say, hey, Daddy, I had just a totally cool new machine today, so we need to buy it. Yeah. And this is how I recognize it, how it's functioning probably here. But yes, otherwise, it's a very modern country, and of course, if the industry is strong, that industry drive people and drive people to buy, so they create the buyers. It's a normal thing, otherwise they would not be able to sell their stuff. So yes, but I mean, we are always more and more winemakers, farmers who work organic and is growing, so maybe not as quick as was in other countries happening, but it's growing and it's happening here as well. So I'm not panicking. But I totally agree with you, Thorsten.
Yeah, and I'm totally optimistic for the future because market is asking for that, what we do at the moment.
Yeah,
and
market is
so
understanding. This is a good thing.
So the colleagues are not stupid. They want to earn money, and so they will follow. We can be sure.
You'll lead the way.
But do you see that translating into winemakers who, for instance, say, well, I won't go to Geisenheim? I mean, for those who don't know, Geisenheim is Germany's foremost enological university, but it's always been the path to becoming a winemaker, to legitimization. Do you think that that's changing? Do you see among your peers, especially Bianca and Daniel, that people say, I'd go train around the world, but I don't need that level of qualification and that I don't get that mindset?
Yeah, so actually it's a good question. I had just today interview in Wiesbaden, and there was Yvonne, a very, very nice lady. She's a, what is percent of English, sorry.
Teacher.
Teacher,
professor, Yvonne Heistermann.
So she's a professor in Geisenheim, especially she teaches biodynamics and also microbiology. So we just were like, we had a very, very nice conversation just about this a few hours ago. And we were both on the same opinion that you actually, the good thing is to have this kind of this kind of way of education, because then you learn the tools, then you learn what is happening in the background. Actually, it is good to have a lot of chemistry lessons and laboratory and to know what kind of chemicals you can use, but it doesn't mean that you need to use them. It's like the same with cooking. If you know what is happening with a carrot when you put it to boiled water, and after you put it to cold water, or when you know what's happening with this carrot when you just put it to the oven, then actually you can cook, because you know what's happening with the ingredients. So it's everything is just like depending on your wish and then your interest and then your fantasy. So there's the same with this, what we are doing. We go to the school, we learn the tools, we learn how to do, and we learn how things are functioning. And then it depends on us after the school, in which way we use this knowledge, what we learn there. So I think it's
there's a great phrase in English that you say you have to learn the rules first in order to know how to break them. And it sounds like that's along the lines of what you're talking about.
Thank you.
So speaking of breaking rules, because
I really want to say that Geisenheim is a better school today than 25 years ago. So
okay.
in the organic items, yeah. Because in my time there was nothing about organic, and today they have projects about biodynamic farming in the vineyard, so it's not so bad. And when you're, like you said, when you're self-reflective enough, then you should know what you can take out of it. But when you started your question, I was laughing because my son started in Geisenheim, and he stopped it after a few weeks. He said, "No, I don't need to go there."
Well, that leads right into my next question, which is that precision engineering and adherence to rules are two characteristics that have long been associated with Germany. What are for each of you the biggest challenges for natural wine producers in a country that's long been governed by Geisenheim? And more importantly, because we've covered the first half of that question, I think, just now, where do each of you draw your inspiration? You come out of school, you know all the rules, you know that in your heart and in your gut, you know you want to break them, you know you want to do something differently. You've said that before, Thorsten, that from the beginning you knew you wanted to do things differently. Where do you look for inspiration when you want to break the rules?
Good question. I never saw it this way.
Okay, good. How did you see it?
Yeah, it was just a development. So I'm a country boy. I like to be outside. I love nature, and then I just recognized that this and that is not necessary, and some more. There's some more that I said a sentence this weekend I really liked. I have to translate it in German first, in English first, because it's true. I'm doing wine, and we grow vines outside, and they should be fine, but they are in the whole system. They are not the most important thing. We are farmers, and we are responsible for a little piece of earth, and that is what we have to think about. And of course, I have to take some grapes from the vineyards, but not for any price. So when it's too expensive for nature, I shouldn't do this. And that's a little bit my rules I follow today. But of course, that was totally different 25 years ago. 25 years ago, it was a political decision to start organic farming, because of the situation in Germany and all over the world, of course. But then it was more on listening to nature, see how wonderful it is, and trying being a part of it without destroying it. And that is something very serious. And so I'm not a traveler. I never did an intern somewhere else in the world. I just did this Geisenheim, and the the 20 years before at home, and the 25 years afterwards at home again. So I live here for my whole life, and so of course, there's always inspiration from this and that. And there was a wine I really liked, but I even don't remember what it was. So there are not so many moments where I can say that was the point where I changed this or that.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Bianca and Dania? Where do you draw your inspiration from? It sounds like from each other.
Yes, I mean, I can totally, again, just agree what Thorsten said. We also do not think on this way. So inspiration, I mean, maybe, yeah, the vintage is giving us inspirations, but the first inspiration was actually this feeling between the rows of Patrick Meyer. And after it was just like this feeling what we wanted to make around us as like a new milieu or circumstance in our case. So that was like actually an example, but it also like happened by accident, or maybe that was just like destiny. Yeah, probably that was more like destiny than accident. And that was like showed us a way, but it was more also like intuition. So I think as when you are younger, you can like maybe more listen to your intuition, and then your intuition brings you to show you a target, and when you see your target, you actually have your way, and you just like need to go this way. So it's like kind of sounds like easy. And yeah, the inspiration comes from nature, and then we both have like questions, and then once Dania tells his question to me, then I tell my question to Dania, then we discuss about this, and that's we have actually most of the times our answers pretty quick, because we are two totally different people, and we can focus on questions from two different views, and then voila.
Yeah, so in terms of, we have different backgrounds, it's always nice to have two different opinions and meanings, and yeah, so it's always nice to have someone close to you where you can share a lot of things, and then go it on from different sides, and yeah, this helped us a lot. My father was pretty conservative, so I didn't think too much about other things, so I just followed kind of his rules. So it was for me, it was really important. So now I can say this. At the time, I didn't understand it, so he also sent me away, but to learn in different countries or wineries. But at this time I was quite young, and I needed to. So for me, this was inspiration to go away from here and see what others did, because he has also a really strong personality. And yeah, so it helped a lot to go to Austria, to Ploder Rosenberg, which was I was 19 just after my apprenticeship, and he was really open and thinking in a lot of times in a totally different way than others. And he was yeah, proud enough to do this. Also, if he was alone, so it was a nice time at Ploder Rosenberg for Freddy. Yeah, and then we converted to organic, and then the next step was Bianca. So we could do our own thing, because also for natural wine he couldn't follow this, because he was too conservative to understand what we are doing. So it was like our he couldn't say anything against it, like, so it was our hidden project where we slowly developed, and at one time we got this a lot of self-confidence to go just this way.
Break out.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I think some of the wines you make are incredibly complex and really very innovative. Like blends that are aged under floor in barrique and experimenting with amphora and large casks and fiberglass, and the varieties that you work with really giving them a different face by taking this hands-off approach in the cellar and through your farming. But I feel like one of the things that people always say about German wine is that the labeling is so complex and so hard to understand the rules of the game. But with natural wine, the labeling is often super simple. It's just Landwein and the variety, and you're done. And yet you're trying to communicate some really complicated concepts in your wines. Do you think that the future for German wine can really be helped by the natural wine approach of just keeping things really simple in the message to the consumer and let them go digging for more information themselves if they're curious, instead of scaring them away with a really complicated lot of information up front?
Yes,
I think that's a question for Thorsten.
I really think so. That is a good chance for us, but maybe for any other wine region in the world too, because the societies are changing at the moment, exactly at the moment. So for me, it started not with the coronavirus. It started with Fridays for Future here in Europe. It is very interesting, and of course they want more transparent products. And of course you're right that German labeling is very confusing and very difficult to understand. And we're working on this. We really want to change it, but it's 20,000 German producers, I guess, at the moment. And yeah, there are some good ideas, but always you can't find new rules without any hurt for anybody. So there must, the compromises will be very difficult. So I'm very optimistic at the moment that it is real one little piece that will help us for the future. Yes.
Fantastic.
Sorry that I start again. Sorry. So yes, my personal opinion is that there are some people, I think not just in Germany, like everyone in the world, who want to have, they feel themselves comfortable if they have like a hard exact labeling. But there are also people who feel comfortable with this kind of way of Landwein, and then they want to take time to know the people who are standing behind the wine. There's like a bit more interest and enthusiasm behind, and it's also okay. So I think like with this movement, what's happening now, there's going to be more the acceptance for natural wine all over the world, but that's going to not take over classical wine, or I think it's because natural wine is not about to take over something or to show that the other part is bad. I think it speaks more for equality. So I think natural wine and also the winemakers, and it's what we bring in all with the colleagues. This is like more something what's gonna win an acceptance, and that's gonna stay at the same level, at the same eye level. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how I see it, like in the future, because we bring in respect and acceptance. So and the other part can be happy, because I think the other part is more like afraid. But if they see the acceptance from this part, then they're gonna give acceptance for us.
So you see both as being able to exist in the same plane in the future, that there's the natural wine is not taking over something else, but actually perhaps making room for itself while still leaving enough room for more conventional or classical wines.
Exactly.
But of course,
it's so nice.
Sometimes we have problems with our labeling today with the natural wines, because we have a wine rule that still exists, and we have to follow these rules. And when you do a pet nut, for example, that is such a gray zone in some ways, because it really does not fit together. And we have to change something there in this point. We are half illegal all the time. For example, in the pet nut is a German Schaumwein, Deutscher Schaumwein. You're not allowed to say Mosel on the label.
Right.
That's because for Schaumwein we don't have this Landwein possibility. How you can say Landwein de Mosel, Vin de Pays de la Moselle, or what is that in English? I don't know.
It's good. That was French.
That was French.
I'm out. I just do German. Well, we have so many more questions that I know Valerie and I would both love to sit here and ask you guys, but we did promise both you and our audience that we would only take up about an hour of our time. So let me end with one question that we tend to end with here at TRINKtalks, and that is, when I used to have an interview, the question that I always would dread the most would be when the person on the other side of the desk sits there and says, "Tell me something about yourself that I wouldn't otherwise know." And I would just start shaking and getting nervous and all of that. But I get to sit on the other side of the desk tonight, which is kind of nice. And so I'm going to ask you, Thorsten, and I'm going to ask you, Bianca and Daniel, what can you tell me, or tell us, all of us here, about natural wine, an insider secret, something that you learned along the way or that prompted you to start this journey? Tell us something that we wouldn't have otherwise known about natural wine.
It's the most easiest thing to do a natural wine out of Riesling.
There you go. Look at that. You are the first person to give us an answer like that. That's impressive.
It's really easy. So a lot of people don't believe that there is good natural Riesling in the world. And let me tell you, it is so easy. We have especially here where it's a little cooler with a low pH, what should happen? When you know a little bit about chemicals, it's very, very easy. We have no risk of mousiness. We have no risk of volatile acidity. You have to be a very, very lazy person if you destroy a Riesling in your cellar.
Fantastic. Thank you. Bianca and Daniel?
What goes to your mind? Okay, so then I'm gonna say what comes to my mind, and then maybe something comes to your mind. Yes, so for me, is the personal feeling of the elegance to bring into wine, and especially I personally changed somehow. I don't know if I can say like developed or changed my taste, but I tend to reduce cloudiness in wines. I stand to it that I think the minerality and all the personality of the terroir as the variety can be more open and can stay more in the focus if the wine is not that cloudy, bottled, as it maybe was before. So this is for us was a big issue, and we changed it with 2019. Of course, there is no filtration, nothing, so no worries. It was just like more a bit play with oxidation, play with pectines, and give less oxygen during the skin contact time for the wine to
Settle. Or
yeah. So we just like reduced it, so did it like only 3 times during 4 weeks, and that was so we could follow that the wines in the barrel settled very well and give more elegance and the beautiful minerality and clearness, and the wine is still able to be bottled without any additives, and you don't need to make anything with it. So for me, this is like somehow that's a big deal.
For me, secret is because of education and school. You always get to know these things what you can do that everything work like you want. But I think natural wine gave me a bit more, push me a bit more down and give more trust in what I do, and just let the things go. And this also goes to the outside. So just look more around yourself and be calm down and trust in the things. Yeah.
Trust your instincts. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. Do any of the three of you have any projects? You have a captive audience for another few minutes. If any of you have any projects that you want to talk about or want to tell us about, feel free. I know, Thorsten, you have one. I don't know if you guys have one that you're doing, or you have, we're all yours.
Oh,
Yeah, if you have any projects or anything you'd want to say.
Yeah, no, we have a new project in house. So it's my son is showing his first wine project in 2 weeks in Berlin, because he's a musician. First of all, he's a musician at the moment and living in Berlin, but of course he's very close to the winery, and there will be a party in Berlin in a nice brewery in Reinickendorf, that is Motel Brews. And they invited him to do his release party in Berlin with his new wine. So it's an orange wine, and when you buy a bottle, you get a vinyl of his music with it. And that's,
how fun!
That's our new project in the house.
Is that available on your website?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay, good. Important statement.
I'm not a wine seller, as you know.
Good. All right. Well, Valerie, I think it's over to you.
Yep. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and for your honesty and energy in the name of natural wine, and of course to our audience for tuning in. Just wanted to let you know that episode 5 of TRINKtalks will air a week from today at the same time, and we'll turn our attention to Spätburgunder, Germany's Pinot Noir. And our guests will be Julia Bertram and Benedikt Baltes, who are kind of the royal couple of Pinot Noir in Germany. So please tune in and join us if you want to find out more or catch a recording of this interview or any of our episodes. Those are available at drinkmag.com. And thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Really appreciate you guys coming out, and for all of you for joining in.
Thank you. Take care.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good evening.
Bye.